Right, welcome back to Distant Vale. You're painting with Harry today, and what we're going to be painting up today is the Communicant Anti-Tank Hunter, one of the mercenaries from the Crusade. So I've got two sculpts here, one of the males and one of the females, and what we're going to be doing is painting them up with a sort of dirty, rusty, tarnished bronze, and trying to go for something like a burnt sort of flesh finish. So to start things off, we've got a black prime, and I'm just going to be taking a bit of rhine oxide from Citadel. I'm just going to stipple this on to get a nice strong base coat of brown. And then we're going to take some plate mail air, and I'm going to mix in a little bit of mahogany from the army painter. And we're going to use this as our sort of base copper tone. To get this copper mix up on the Mini, what we're going to be doing today is using a sponge. What I've taken is just a bit of dish cleaning sponge, ripped it up to get a bit of a textured surface, and I'll be using this just to gently work some of this copper paint onto the metallic areas of the model. I'm not trying to be too neat or precise. The beauty of sponging is that it works almost like a dry brush, where it's going to hit mostly those sort of raised surfaces, but it's also going to leave a bit of a texture like stippling. So going a little bit rougher is actually going to work in your favor. And even if it is a little bit messy, we're going to be cleaning this up later on down the track with things like washes and a little bit of edge highlighting. We may even be able to hide a little bit of the roughness with a verdigris effect, which I'll be going through at the end of this. With the metallics done, what we're going to move on to next is adding a bit of definition to those metallics. And what I'm going to be using today is an oil wash. What I've got is some burnt umber and black mixed in about a 50-50 ratio in terms of the oil paints, and then mix it up with about 6 to 8 parts mineral spirits or mineral turpentine, depending on where you live. And I've got that to a nice wash consistency, and the low surface tension on the base of the medium is going to make it so it runs straight into those cracks. You will have to be a little bit careful about not oversaturating the Mini, as it will pull at the base of the model. And with that oil wash applied, you can see just how much definition it adds to those armor plates. It really just helps to make them stand out a bit more over a standard wash. And what you may find with some washes is that it leaves a real shiny finish, and oils tend not to do that as much. We're going to now move on to painting the skin tone, and because I want this to be a little bit more sort of heavy into that red tone, we're going to be starting with a mulled berry from the army painter. It's a little bit like a sort of dark purpley red, and it's a really nice base tone to work up from. And what we're going to be trying to do is take it from the sort of really sort of rich purple red color up into a very desaturated green, which is going to look quite blocky in terms of the highlights later on down the track. But that's when we're going to be pulling out that oil wash again to do a bit of covering over some of the less than well refined highlights. End up with a color that's about 3/4 mulberry, 1/4 necrotic flesh. It's not quite that ratio in terms of the equal amount of paint on the palette, but more sort of a color that's shifted closer towards that mulberry than it is the necrotic flesh. That sort of desaturated green is a very weak color, and it does not sort of tone the color, the mulberry color, as strongly as other paints would. So it's going to look more like a desaturated purple, but it is a good base for building up into that more green tone down the track. The trick here is just trying to be consistent between the two models and across the model itself as to what color you're sort of highlighting up with next. If it ends up being more pale than what I've got here, it's still going to look good, but the bigger the value jump is, the more work you have to do to clean things up later on. So for the next highlight step, we're going to take some fresh necrotic flesh, put it on the palette, and we're going to mix up a color that's probably closer to a 50-50 or halfway between that mulberry original color and necrotic flesh. And we're going to then use this to highlight a slightly smaller area. If with the first highlight you covered about 50% of the areas you want to be brighter, you're covering about 25% of that area, or about half the highlight from the previous step. This is going to give you enough coverage that it's going to make a visual difference without being so much that you're starting to lose that transition step. Right, and now we are up to the final highlighting step on the skin, and we're going to be doing this with straight necrotic flesh. And what we're going to be doing is covering just about maybe a tenth of each of the areas we want to highlight, just a very, very small area, wanting to accentuate the shapes that we're highlighting without completely drowning it in this highest highlight color. In a few areas, I'm going to be covering a little bit more than that sort of 10%, because I just want to make it look, sort of accentuate that shape a little bit extra, but otherwise trying to keep just little bits here and there to really make the model pop. Right, now that we've got most of the highlighting done, what we're going to move on to next is the next oil wash, and this is going to be primarily aimed at trying to draw all those colors together. So again, it's the same sort of dark brown tone we used across the armor, but we're going to go a little bit less dilute. So it's going to cover the model with a little bit more of an opaque layer. And then what we're going to do is, once it is all on the model and dried, we're going to take a earbud, a Q-tip, and we're going to gently work away some of that paint layer with some straight mineral terps, just to help clean it up and to make that underlying highlight shine through a little bit brighter. It can also be a little bit of a way to touch up or rearrange where that oil wash has sat. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to really cure on the model, so you've got plenty of time to work through and just reactivate it gently with that mineral turpentine. Final step for the paint job. What we're going to do is do a bit of a verdigris effect. going to take some hydro turquoise and some alchemy from the army painter, mix it up into a 50-50 ratio and water it down a lot with a couple of drops of airbrush thinner added in. And what it's going to do is make a really thin wash that likes to stick to the corners with that, while also providing a little bit of a tint to the broader flat. And it will give a nice sort of a proper look the minis once it's dried. Anywhere that's pulling a little bit too aggressively, you just work it away with a clean